Okay, today's video is going to be a fun one. We're going to check out a new product from a company that you may have heard of called Segway. That's right, Segway, the guys who make the electric scooters and the little two-wheel hoverboard things. I'm not even sure what they're called. So they're not typically well known for being in the power station business because, well, they haven't really been in the power station business, but they have been in the portable device, pretty substantial battery pack type product line or product space for quite some time. So they know how to work with lithium ion and lithium iron phosphate battery technology. And so they have just come out with a new product. This is their Cube 1000. It's going to be offered in a variety of little permutations, including the Cube 2000. But basically the difference between those 1000 and 2000s is going to be the kind of the base battery capacity that they come with. The inverter itself is going to be the same on both. And in fact, let me turn this around because this is where it gets pretty interesting. As you can see here, this is the inverter module on top, and then the battery modules, which are basically 1000 watt hours or 1 kilowatt hour, can be stacked on there. And you can add multiple of these base ones, up to 5000 watt hours total. And this is a 2200 watt pure sine wave AC inverter capable of a surge of up to 4400 watts. So it's quite a capable little product. So I don't know much more about it other than that. It's going to be on Kickstarter, and I'll provide all that information later. Of course, there will be links down below. But for now, let's get this thing out of the box and see what it comes with. All right, let's see what's in the cable box. Got a user manual. Just a couple of cables. So got a car charger to an Anderson, so standard 12 volt car charger to Anderson connector, and then a nice heavy duty AC cable. So no power brick, should plug that right into the AC outlet and you're good to go. Looks like we've got Anderson ports, AC connector on the back, and a reset button. Big Segway logo on the top. So I don't think it has wireless charging. And you can see it's got one battery expansion. So this particular one is 1000 watt hours. And like I said, you can stack up to 5 of these on underneath this one AC inverter module. And then you get 5000 watt hours with this single inverter. So very expandable. Go ahead and pull that's always a fun part. Let me see if I can turn this thing on.
That's what she said.
Pretty good display. I'm not sure how well that comes out since it's kind of at an angle on the top. I do like the fact that I don't have to squat down to see it. 3 AC outlets on the front. Okay, all your USB ports. So 4 USB A's, 2 USB C's, both of which are PD 100 watts, it looks like. A couple of DC 5521s, probably. All right, so that's about all I can get into right now. I need to go work with this thing, put it through the usual paces, and find out what it's capable of doing and what kinds of things you can run with it. And yeah, so we'll report back after I've had a chance to go through all that, which is about 2 seconds. Okay, we are back. It's been actually well over a month since I recorded that intro segment, and in addition to spending a lot of time working with this Segway Cube 1000 to find out what it's all about, you might notice that my surroundings have also changed a bit, and that's because we finally moved out to a larger property in the country where I'll be able to finally be starting to expand the kinds of projects and topics that I can bring to the channel. So stay tuned for a ton of new content, and maybe consider subscribing and click that notification bell if you want to be able to keep up with the goings on here at the new homestead. But let's get back to this Segway Cube 1000. I'll cover the key specs first, and then we'll see how it performs under my battery of tests, and then find out whether or not maybe this is something you want to put on your short list for serious consideration. All right, so as I mentioned in the intro, this is currently a Kickstarter project or campaign, and Segway expects to begin shipping units to customers sometime in December 2023, which is just around the corner. Now, they're offering the Cube series in 2 base configurations. This Cube 1000 that I have right here, which has a 1000 watt hour battery capacity, and the Cube 2000 that has, you probably guessed it, a 2000 watt hour battery capacity. So both units have the very same 2200 watt pure sine wave AC inverter. It's this top module right here, and that has a surge rating up to 4400 watts. And by the way, if all this talk about watts and watt hours is confusing, I'll put a link right up here for a video that explains all of that, along with all the other important things that you might want to be looking for if you're shopping for a power station. Now, the Cube series does use lithium iron phosphate battery chemistry, and it's rated to maintain at least 80% of its original capacity even after 4,000 full charge and discharge cycles. And there's currently special launch pricing going on right now where the Cube 1000 is selling for $569 and the Cube 2000 is selling for $999, and that's I think 43% off the list price on both of those units. Oh, and Segway has put a 5-year warranty on these power stations, which is fantastic. Now, I've already talked about the various outputs on this unit, and but I will correct myself in saying that these little ports right up here, these are DC 5525 ports, not 5521 ports. And so that little pin in the center is slightly larger than you would see on a 5521 connector. Now, in terms of inputs, these units do have an AC fast charging capability up to 1250 watts and solar charging at up to 800 watts with an input range of 12 to 60 volts. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can actually dual charge this thing via both AC and solar at the same time for crazy fast charging. Now, in my particular opinion, that's, just because you can do that doesn't mean that you should do that, at least maybe not all the time. And really, why would you need to, since the AC charge rate that you already get at 1250 watts will have you charged up in just over an hour anyway. And with that 800 watts of solar input capacity, that should get you somewhere around a total of 4,000 watt hours of charged capacity in a single day of full sun, which is plenty fast for something that's only 1,000 watt hours or maybe even the 2,000 watt hours of the Cube 2000. But if you expand either one of these up to, say, 4,000 watt hours of capacity, you're still good in a full day of sun. But be aware, if you max out the expansion on these to the full 5 kilowatts and you plan to recharge on solar alone, it is going to take you a full day and a couple hours on day 2. So just be aware of that. And before I forget to mention it, in case you're interested, the Cube 1000 weighs in at 35.7 pounds, whereas the Cube 2000 weighs in at 57.5 pounds. So it would seem that every one of those 1,000 watt-hour expansion modules will add another 20 pounds, just in case you plan on adding more capacity and you want to do the math to see how much it's going to weigh. All right, let's jump to some clips and see how this unit actually performs. All right, let's find out what the usable capacity is on this Segway Cube 1000 through the AC inverter. So I've got a little 200 watt load here, got my watt meter. Let me go ahead and turn on the AC inverter. And as you can see, they've got the grounding plug there on the top instead of the bottom, the grounding pin. So we are pulling 120.7 volts. So 120 volts standard. That's excellent. Go ahead and plug this in and get this started. And we will log the input or output from this until it goes down to 0 stated charge and find out how many usable watt hours we can get out of this Cube 1000 from the AC inverter. All right, looks like our AC discharge test is done. Let's reconnect this to power. Let's see where we ended up, by the way. All right, so this says 700 and I'm going to say 70. It could be 774, 775. I really don't know with the precision on this, but 770 watt hours. As you can see, we've got this fully topped off at 100%. Let's find out what the usable capacity is through the DC port using the 12 volt socket here. So this is a 10 amp 12 volt socket. You can see right now I do have it energized here and we are outputting 13.5 volts. So let's put a load on it and see what that drops to. That should go down. As you can see, it's dropping 10 amps. Let's see if it'll hold that. And we are counting up the watt hours. So we're at currently 11.4 volts under load. That is within spec for a 12 volt output. And we're going to find out if the state of charge actually, as it drops and gets close to, say, that under 5% range, if we are still maintaining something in the realm of 11.5 volts, which would tell us that it has a regulated 12 volt port or not. So we'll check back in a little while and see how we do. All right, our DC capacity test is done. Let's zoom in here and take a look and see what we've got. It looks like we are at 716 watt hours of usable capacity through the DC output ports. And that's a little bit low. That's 70, call it 71, 72% of rated capacity. And I would say the average for this product space is something in the 82 to 84% range. So a little bit low on the usable capacity. So not really sure yet why that is. Maybe Segway is reserving a little bit more battery power for, just for battery health. could possibly be what's going on. So I'll have to reach out to them and see what they have to say. All right, just for fun, I reran the DC discharge test on this Cube 1000 using a DC 5521 cable to my battery tester. And this time I got 700 and almost 83 watt hours, which is a much better number than the 71 or 72 watt hours I was getting through the 12 volt port here, this little refrigerator socket right there, that guy. So the 5525 ports do seem to be a little bit more efficient, less heat loss than you get with one of these guys here. So that's interesting. I was not aware of that. That's still, I would say, just a hair below average. Average being between 80 and 84% of usable or of rated capacity. So this puts us at about 78% of rated capacity. Still a pretty acceptable number. All right, we're going to do a AC inverter load test on this Cube 1000 here from Segway. It has got a pure sine wave AC inverter rated for 2200 watts continuous, and we're at 2196 right now. I've actually been there for about a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. Make sure this thing will handle that 2200 watts output for a full 10 minutes without shutting off on us. So let's check back and see how it does. And by the way, so far at least, even though we're running pretty much right at max rated output, it's still pretty quiet. Let's check that out. So just a hair over 48 decibels. That's pretty much whisper quiet. I'll recheck it if it seems like the fans ramp up any louder, but that's really impressive so far. All right, clearly no problem running this thing continuously right at 2200 watts. So let me go ahead and shut off some of this load here. It's getting a little warm in here with all these oil heaters running. All right, let's find out if this Cube 1000 can handle the startup surge from an 8000 BTU air conditioner like this little new air unit right here. So let me go ahead and fire up the air conditioner and see if I can get the compressor to come on. And we will see if this thing handles that or not. All right, I just heard the compressor kick. So this should jump up to over 500 watts. So no problem with compressor startup. We handled that just fine. And this is going to pull about 585 watts continuous. So air conditioner test definitely passes. Now I do know that this thing has something it's kind of like a power lift or boost mode. There's a variety of terminologies out here for this sort of thing, but basically what it's designed to be able to do is to take anything over 2200 watts and kind of throttle it down. And that is not actually good for complicated electronics. So things like air conditioners, for example, refrigerators, televisions, computers. These things have a specific power draw requirement and you have to be able to meet that. So you really only want to run it past 2200 watts continuously if you are using simple resistive loads like heaters, for example, or lights. All right, now I know some of you out there like to use these things to power PA systems or instrument amps, guitar amps. So let's do an amp test to make sure that we're not getting any crazy noise coming out of our amp from the AC power. So make sure it's nice and clean, just like it is coming out of the wall. So first, I've got this Fender amp here plugged into the wall. I'm going to boost the audio in both tests when we power it from the Cube and from the wall. So I'm going to boost it by the same amount so you can hear if there's any extra noise coming from the amp when we have it plugged into the power station. So let's find out. So this is from the grid. So this is the baseline. All right, nice and quiet. I really heard barely any hiss at all. So this will be interesting. Let me take this and plug this into the front of the Cube 1000. Let me turn it on again and I'll boost it by the same amount and we'll see if it sounds any different. Sounds exactly the same to me. So I do not find that to be a noisy inverter at all. So noisy amp test definitely passes. All right, let's check the UPS capability on the Cube 1000. If I zoom in here on the display, there's a little U with a circle around it telling me that we're in UPS mode. And I have the sacrificial laptop here without the battery plugged directly into the Cube 1000 here, running through the AC inverter on the Cube. And I have the Cube plugged into grid power here in the back. So right now it's passing through the small amount of power that the laptop is requiring. So let's find out if we simulate a power outage by pulling the grid power from the Cube, if it switches over without the laptop actually shutting down on me. So let's give that a quick try. 3, 2, 1. All right, so that appears to be successful. And just to show you that I am plugged in here, let me try unplugging and replugging the laptop very quickly. I didn't get it all the way unplugged. Whoops. Yeah, that was a pretty lousy attempt. But anyway, you can see the laptop did go out immediately. And UPS mode on the Cube 1000 is confirmed. All right, I have got the Cube 1000 down to 30% state of charge. And I have got a 400 watt little panel array here from All Powers plugged into it. Now the Cube 1000 can handle up to 800 watts of power, but I think the range is 11 volts up to 60 volts. But what I'm interested in is to find out if this will auto-resume charging. I'm assuming it's because the timeouts, I've got the AC inverter off, I've got the DC off as well. So, in fact, let me just make sure. Yeah, that was the DC. So yeah, so the outputs are turned off, and I know the unit is basically going to put itself to sleep and auto shut down. And I'm curious if it will automatically resume solar charging on its own in the morning as the sun comes up and we breach that at 11 volts. So we will check back in the morning and find out if it does. All right, it's about 9:15 a.m. in the morning. Nice bright sun on the panels right now. I'm not sure if I see any activity here. Well, we are at 45% and it is charging. Let me go ahead and turn it on and see what we're actually doing here. Got a little over 100 watts in. Apologize how this display looks. This is because of the frame rate on my phone, not the actual display. So yeah, it is definitely charging and I didn't have to do anything. So unattended solar charge definitely works. Okay, so as you saw, this 2200 watt AC inverter is no joke. This thing is a beast and definitely lives up to its rated specs. And keep in mind that a higher output AC inverter is going to have a higher no-load draw, which is to say that when the AC inverter is on, even when it's not powering any loads, it's going to be consuming a little more power than a smaller inverter will. So in this particular case, it appears that that's going to be around 20 watts of continuous power, which on the Cube 1000 translates to about 3% of usable capacity for every hour that you leave the AC inverter on. And as far as I can tell, there is no auto shutoff, at least not on the AC side. There is on the DC side. So you definitely want to make sure that you don't leave the AC inverter on when you're not using it. Now on the DC outputs, it does have a 15-minute auto shutoff designed right in. And you might be thinking, oh no, that's way too short to run a 12-volt fridge that runs intermittently. But I'll tell you that this did pass my 24-hour intermittent DC fridge test with no issues at all, which tells me that even the very small amount of power that the fridge uses between compressor cycles seems to be plenty enough to keep this thing from auto shutting off in between compressor cycles. Okay, let's talk about those usable capacity numbers that we got. I was kind of curious why they came in a few percentage points below average, so I reached out to the Segway engineering team for a response, and as it turns out, the reason for this is that they actually designed the battery management system to leave enough battery capacity in reserve even when the unit reaches 0% state of charge to allow it to sit for up to a year without running into any problems. So it's kind of a safety measure, you might say. So do just be aware that the capacity that you actually have access to, at least on the Cube 1000, is around 76% of the rated capacity instead of the more typical 80 to 85% of rated capacity. But based on the particular design, I do suspect that the usable capacity percentage does improve fairly quickly when you start adding expansion modules. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that Segway does have mobile app support for the Cube Series power stations. Now, at the time that I've been testing this thing, the app was still in beta, not really fully released yet. So I suspect they're going to continue to add some functionality over time. But even in its beta state, it did give me access to the basic functions like remote monitoring and control of the AC and DC outputs, as well as the ability to perform firmware updates, which was pretty handy. But for now, at least, it doesn't seem to give me the ability to vary the charge speed or modify the auto shutdown timers. But who knows? Maybe that might come at a later date with a firmware update. I'm not really sure. It does, however, allow you to disable that R drive feature, which is where it throttles the voltage down when you're exceeding that 2200 watt power output on resistive loads. And that's a welcome option. And personally, I recommend leaving that R drive option off unless all you're running is maybe a heater and some lights, because you don't want to damage more complex circuitry of things like TVs and computers and air conditioners and refrigerators. And the app does let you select a more aggressive cooling fan response, which might come in handy, especially in hot operating conditions where maybe you might be willing to trade in some quiet fan operation for more effective cooling. It's kind of just nice that they even give you that option. Okay, let's wrap up. I am really impressed with not only the modularity of this unit, but also the rugged magnesium housing and these heavy-duty bumpers on the side that allow you to set it kind of in whatever orientation you want without blocking the cooling vents. And I think the ability to easily connect capacity expansions with just 4 retaining screws, 2 on each side, instead of having large gauge cables kind of sticking out in every direction, is an extremely welcome and innovative design. And I do like that modular separation between the battery modules and the ACD module or AC inverter. I think that's a potential game changer, since you can easily expand or even replace tired battery modules if and when the time comes, and you still got really a fully functional AC inverter and DC output module right up here. So you just replace the bottom part, it's like you got a brand new unit. Now really the only thing missing is maybe wireless phone charging, and let's be honest, is that really a deal breaker for anyone? If it is for you, or let me know in the comments below if you agree with me on that or not. Maybe the only other thing would be cool if they had the ability to add an RV30 connection somehow. I think that would be a neat feature if they were able to offer it, but at this point in time, it's not something that you can get. But I do think, especially at this launch special pricing that they've got going on right now, with the extensive feature set that this has and the performance specs, and the 5-year warranty, let's not forget about that, and from a well-known brand no less, this Cube Series is definitely something that you should be considering if you happen to be in the market for an expandable, portable power station right now. I think it's really nice to see an established consumer product brand that does have extensive battery-powered tech experience like Segway getting into this product space. I think this Cube Series has the potential to be a real disruptor, and I think it's going to do very well in its debut, and I look forward to seeing whatever else that Segway might have on their product development roadmap. So if you're interested in checking this thing out, I have put links to their Kickstarter page in the description below for your convenience. And once it does start shipping in December, I think it'll eventually be available on both Amazon and Segway's website as well, and I'll kind of add those links as soon as I get them. All right, I think that's a wrap. I do hope you found at least something in the video helpful. If you did, please consider clicking on the like button for me. I'd really appreciate that. And if you're not already a subscriber, well, maybe you consider subscribing as well. Subscribing? Yeah, that's a word. I've got a bunch of cool projects in the video queue coming up, and maybe you'll find those, or maybe some of the other videos I already have on my channel, helpful in some way. You have my sincere appreciation for stopping by and watching this video, and I do hope you'll consider joining me for the next one. Until then, have fun out there.